Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasho Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya, Astoda Shishyamat, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya, Astoda Shishyamat, His Divine Grace, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Ananti Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki. Nam Acharya Siladas Thakur Ki. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Sisi Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki. Vrindavan Navadip Dham Ki. Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki. Bhakti Devi Tulasi Devi Ki. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from the Transcendental Diary by Harisori Prabhu, July 20th, 1976. I'll just read a little bit and I'll paraphrase, and I'll also speak some pastimes that are related to what is being said here in this few pages that we have to read. Oh, there's a lot of pages basically, but I'll paraphrase most of it. Instead of walking in Central Park, Prabhupada took his exercise in Riverside Park along the Hudson River. He told us this was the route he used to take in 1966 to get to Dr. Misra's apartment in order to do his cooking. Pointing with his cane to the concrete path, he indicated grass growing here and there. Then he asked why they say there is no life on the moon. Life is everywhere. From the stone it is coming. He explains how scientists say that there is simply sand on the moon. But sand is produced from water. Therefore, there must have been water on the moon prior to sand. And thus there must also have been vegetation. According to the Bhagavatam, there is life on the moon, and Prabhupada backed up this information with his unerring common sense. So here we see that it's talking about the higher planet, the moon, and the moon planet also has living entities. People live there. And there was a conversation, with Srila Prabhupada and Dr. Singh, who became Swarup Damodar Maharaj, was a very advanced devotee. He was a scientist. And Prabhupada was asking him, what is the opinion of scientists pertaining to the moon? And their idea was that there's no life there. And Srila Prabhupada, in his usual way, chastising the scientists, said that is nonsense. But we shouldn't preach like that, to others. Then it may not be appreciated. And Srila Prabhupada responded that there's life there. And because you cannot find any living entities there, but Prabhupada is pointing out, he gave us a very logical explanation how there's sand, there must be water, like that. But Prabhupada was saying that the moon planet is covered with dust, but within that dust, the living entities can live. Because every atmosphere is suitable for life. But you may not have that particular body to reside there, but every atmosphere, every place is suitable for life. Therefore, in the Vedas it is stated that, that there is life everywhere, and the word used is sarvagata, which means existing in all circumstances. Everywhere there is life. And the living entity, as we know, is not material. It's sometimes difficult for us, even for us ourselves, because we identify the material body as much as we talk about it often, so often that you're not the body, you're spirit, soul. But that idea that we are the body is always there. We tend to satisfy the body, and like sometimes people see me, after a while, and they say, you're still looking the same. I don't know if you had this experience. Because they're looking at the body. You're still looking the same. But I told him, no, I'm 66 years old. The body has changed. So people think that you're youthful and you're young, but the body has changed. They don't have an idea about the soul. So when we speak of different atmospheres, Prabhupada said, but when we speak of different atmospheres, we refer to different material condition. So the different material condition. So this was from another conversation with Srila Prabhupada. And we understand from the Gita that the spirit soul cannot be cut, it cannot be dried, it cannot be moistened. And it can exist anywhere and it can live anywhere. But the scientists, they have this idea, they make various devices that can sense water. And they felt that, that they concluded in the moon there's no water and there's no life. But everywhere, even in the sun, there is apparently no water, but still there are living entities there. We may think, well, the sun is a hot planet, it'll just, will get burnt or will dry up. But even there, there's life. And Srila Prabhupada gave a very good example. He said, how does a cactus in the desert live apparently without water? Very, very, yeah. So, because it gets water from the atmosphere. It's good water from the atmosphere. Because the atmosphere contains all the elements to sustain life, everything. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether, space, like that. So like that we can conclude, that there's living entities everywhere. And we may not have faith, just like in my body there's fire. But you can't see that fire, but you feel warmth. You feel the warmth. Because you don't see it, and this is not known to scientists. So the moon planet, is very wonderful, and it's very, like sometimes we look at the moon, and especially when it's full moon, it's very bright, and it's good for vegetation. But we look at the moon, and so much of memories come, or so much of well, anyway, there's other things. But anyway, the moon has, it's very beautiful, especially on the full moon night, like Sharad season, when during the month of Kartik. And just like, Raghunath Maharaj was saying how he wanted to see the Taj Mahal, When I was in India, and once I went with some people to disperse some ashes in the month of July, which is very hot in India. It's really like extremely hot. You can hold a chapati, it'll get toasted like that. That's how hot it is. So yeah. So that he wanted to see that, the Taj Mahal. And many foreigners go, but just to see the reflections of the moon on the tomb. It's quite something. So, they were visiting Agra, which is not very far, and some people that I took with me to disperse some ashes, they were insisting that I go to see the Taj Mahal. I said, no, I'm not going there. Because it's got nothing to do with me, it's not. I'm in Vrindavan. Why should I leave Vrindavan? Why should I leave Govardhan? But then Raghunath Maharaj, he convinced his god brother Dravida Prabhu, and he wanted to go there, and he because he was quoting, Prabhupada. That Prabhupada wrote in the Krishna book. He says that the Taj Mahal is especially pleasing on the full moon night of the Sharad season. So therefore he was like looking, Prabhupada was really a genius, he could make every place auspicious, talking about, and he mentioned it. So Raghunath Maharaj had this vision to go, and so, like this, he convinced his god brother to go there, and then he happened to see the Taj Mahal. So the discussion continues, and there's a new group of senior men that is surrounding him, Prabhupada, and Prabhupada again raised the Mars issue. So people want to go to the different planets, they want to go to the higher planets, and Prabhupada wanted to know what is going on there, what is their idea, what is the idea of going to the higher planets, especially the Mars. So they haven't gone to Mars yet, but according to NASA, the satellites in charge of going to the different planets and making all the necessary arrangement, they are suggesting that in the 2030s, that's another 5 years' time, they will be able to go to Mars. And it'll take 7 to 10 months. But depending, this is their speculation. But going to these higher planets, yogis can go sitting in one place, can go travel to all these planets. But they have to make so many arrangements. Then a devotee called Altreya Rishi, he said that, that the scientists constantly want to discover more and more. Because they want to claim that they are lords. Because to give up proprietorship is not so easy, even for spiritualists. To not be attached is very difficult. What to speak of materialists? But what is that discovery, Prabhupada asked? You simply go and see, that's all. Atreya could see the pointlessness of it and said there was really no valid purpose. So Radha Vallabh said that it was considered advancement of knowledge. Because going, sometimes people are proud of their journey to many places. And they start telling you, I've been here, I've been there, but you've been nowhere. So sometimes people are proud of their knowledge of visiting different places. Even when devotees talk to me, sometimes I'm not listening to what they say when they're describing that. So, but then when Guru Das said they want to colonize because there is overpopulation on this planet, so Prabhupada mocked them, another rascal. But you can't say this to scientists and another rascal and a nonsense and all these things. So because of overpopulation. And when I was in school, there was a theory called the Malthusian theory of population. And the Malthusian theory of population speaks about how it is actually deduced from, there'll be a shortage of food. This person, Malthus, or the theory of population growth, he based it on that there will be an overpopulation and then be a shortage of food. That was his theory. Last night I was looking at this and I was thinking that, I was looking at the Sri Upanishad, and in the invocation it says, Om Purnam Ada Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Avisyate. Because Krishna, he is complete. If he's complete, then if God is complete, then everything that comes from him, won't it be complete? It's a very logical conclusion. Just like the world is complete. So everything that emanates from him is definitely complete. But how does person come to overpopulation? There will be shortage because he doesn't have complete knowledge. And the way Prabhupada writes it in the purport, all forms of incompleteness are experienced due to the incomplete knowledge of the complete whole. That's how he writes it. Because our knowledge is incomplete about the complete person, about God, we'll think there's overpopulation. And Prabhupada, I was reading in another place, he said, then why don't they go to, why they don't go back to Godhead then, if there was overpopulation? That's another way of looking at it. You can go back to Godhead. Then you think about food. Even like every ant or any living species on the planet, they're supplied food. Just like the ant gets grain and sugar, and the elephant gets tons of food. But everybody is able to eat. So really there's no shortage. Actually, Smriti Krishna was talking the other day, and he was saying how they get rid of excess products, and that's like in economics it's called dumping. That's what it's called, dumping. So therefore there's no question of overpopulation, because the Father is Krishna, he's fully opulent, there's no scarcity of food. There is, this is just propaganda. Overpopulation, as Prabhupada said, is only a myth. You see, because of like karma, you may not have that, because Krishna is providing everything, but because of our sinful activities, we may not have access to resources, and then we think, well, we blame it on the government, we blame on this. Actually, when we're speaking, we should not blame the government, even if they are not performing well. Because I quite often see devotees talk, about the government, but the government are doing many good things also, which you don't talk about. So you have to be careful, of speaking, because there's a lot of things they will do that is lined with the Shastra also. Like, I'll just give you one example. They create many jobs for people throughout the country. They created many jobs. Like they have assistant teachers, assistant pharmacists, helping their pharmacists. They have assistant. They just create for a few months short-term jobs for them. You get it? Why they did that? And then that's one of the things they do, and that's a good thing. And that Prabhupada talk about, it's a responsibility of the government to provide employment. So yes, Krishna says in the Gita that I am the seed-giving father of all living entities. And they are trying to stop overpopulation, but where is the solution? Every minute, the population is increasing by 100% persons. These are the statistics. And we talk about the solution to birth, old age. Prabhupada is speaking about these things. And he's talking about scientists. They should look into solving these problems. They should look into solving these problems. Then we go back to Guru Das, and one of Prabhupada's disciples, he grinned and said, they want to put the American flag on the moon and say it is ours. So it's like that. There's, this conquering and wanting other people's territory, and they put the flag on the moon. And Prabhupada struck the nationalistic mentality with biting humor and sarcasm, and then lick up, here is American flag, and then like the dog, lick up urine. This graphic comparison had everyone in stitches. So lick up the dog, lick urine, it is useless dog's business. So like this, people are very excited of having more facility, more land. Sometimes, we meet people, they tell us how much property they got and what they're owning, and they're very proud of it, But in the end, you're going to leave it behind. And it's not your property. Then Pushta Krishna, who was he was a little bit more serious, he said, they feel they should explore the unknown. And the unknown, Prabhupada said, that will remain everlastingly unknown. It will remain unknown. And this word inconceivable, it is inconceivable. It will never be done. Because he was actually talking about the speed of mind. Just like whilst I'm speaking here, somebody's mind must be in what the prasadam going to be. It's going to be the same thing. Vidyapati will be the same thing. It's going to be the same thing. So your mind is gone there. It's the speed of mind. And he is quoting this verse from the Brahma Samhita to say how they cannot understand something that is inconceivable, because inconceivable means you can't understand it. They'll never have real knowledge. They'll never get it. Because the real knowledge comes from the scriptures. So as they walked on the riverside, with the early morning traffic steadily increasing, Prabhupada asked the scientists, Prabhupada asked what the scientists say about the sun. So they also think it's too hot there, life does not exist there. But no, we just mentioned earlier on that the cactus can grow in desert, on dry sand, because water is already there. All the elements are there in the atmosphere. Then Tripurari Maharaj replied, they think it's too hot for life to exist there. But in the Bhagavatam we have, when you read the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it speaks about the sun. The movement of the sun is not stationary. It's also moving like other planets. And the sun's movement determine the duration of night and day. So when the sun travels north of the equator, it moves slowly during the day and quickly at night. Thus, the way the Bhagavatam puts it, thus increasing the duration of the daytime and decreasing the duration of night. So similarly, when the sun travels to the equator, the exact opposite is true. The duration of the day decreases and the duration of the night increases. So there, in the sun planet, and I was reading those descriptions, I was just so amazed, that there's so much of information about the sun planet. And there's living entities there. There's persons there. There's a carriage, there's a sun god, there's a chariot that carries the sun, the personality of the sun. And it's described, it is 28,800,000 miles long and 1/4 as wide. That's like 7,200,000 miles wide. This is a description of the chariot. So the Vedic scriptures, give a very vivid description. And I remember when I was listening to the Ramayana by Atma Tattva, he gave a very amazing description of the Ramayana, and he was talking about this. Like Arunadev sits in the front of the sun god, and he's engaged in driving that chariot, and he's controlling the horses, and he looked backwards to the sun. He's looking from the left side. So he's looking at the sun, but he's controlling the horses. It's quite amazing. And there are 60,000 saintly persons, and they are named Valikilyas, and the size of a thumb. I don't know how. And they're located in front of the sun god, and they're offering eloquent prayers of glorification. This is not known to the scientists. This is from the Bhagavad. So then we go back. So how Krishna was there, Prabhupada asked. They don't believe that, Radha Ballabh said. So how can I believe you, Prabhupada returned. If you don't believe Krishna, shall I have to believe you? So if somebody doesn't believe in Krishna, why do we have to believe them? It's a very straightforward thing. Therefore, we don't need to get into too much of arguments, with people. Then Radhavallabh offered the scientific explanation. They have calculated that as you come with a certain amount, a billion miles of the sun, Prabhupada showed the flaw in his reasoning. That is you, not Krishna. That is the difference between you and Krishna. So there's so much to talk about the sun. I know we'll skip a lot. But from just like try to understand, darkness comes from light. When there's no light is visible, then we are in darkness. And clouds are not to be found in the sun. That would be against the nature of the sun. But by the energy of the sun, other things are temporarily created, such as mist, clouds, or darkness. These creations are temporary, but the sun remains. So there's so much of information about the sun, and we can talk about it, for quite a few hours. And the Vedic cosmology is quite different from the modern scientists. And there are many invisible planets and stars. For example, like the Rahu's planet passes before the sun and the moon. Then we get an eclipse. And somewhere in the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada, in the 5th canto, he mentions that they may have gone to this planet, Rahu's planet. So there's so much can be said about the sun. Then Prabhupada gets into a discussion about the Sudras and the Brahmanas. And then he speaks about how Sudras can be misled at any moment. And then he speaks also about, he was giving an example of a story in Allahabad. Just like some people are good in speaking so they can entice, women. And, I'm coming from an Indian prince family. Some people come and they marry some European and they go to India and then they engage in collecting water in a bucket. Now this person, So once there was a Mohammedan, a vagabond, he bluffed one girl like that I'm coming from a Mohammedan prince family. Then she married him, and when she went to Allahabad, then they put those those black outfit, burqa, and was living in a hut, and she was bringing water from the street. Then she wrote a letter to the viceroy. This is my position. So the police came and rescued her and sent her back home. So Prabhupada tells this pastime because he was saying sometimes, we're not saying that you're less intelligent. This is Chanakya Pandit, you can fight with him. But yeah, he says that sometimes women are less intelligent and we all, in one sense we all are Sudras in Kali Yuga, and therefore we may get cheated like this. So we have to be careful. The Sudras can be misled easily. And as you were listening yesterday about the different divisions of in the Chaturvarna Maya system, the social orders, and we're given sufficient intelligence, but ultimately we want to become a Brahmana. We want to have peace of mind, sense control, austerity, cleanliness, tolerance, honesty, and knowledge. And these are important qualities to develop. These are for the intellectual class. And the Sudras, they just help the other classes. And they create things, as Rukmini was saying, they create nice products for others to enjoy. So yes, these are Sudras. So there's a great difference. So then, Prabhupada was like speaking about women because he received a letter and this is quite interesting. He received a letter from a sannyasi's widow and the danger of having unprotected women freely mixing with men. So without being prompted, he told his managers, listen to this carefully, now there should be one rule, that unless they are husband and wife, man and woman should not worship together. So meaning, now it's not so clear the way he said it. So Pushna Krishna asked, on the altar? Yes, strictly prohibited, Prabhupada emphasized. Quite something, huh? Some things we may not be able to do because of circumstances. So then the more clarity was required, and Tamal Krishna asked if that meant on the same altar, because you may have like 3 altars. He wondered if it was all right if they worked on different altars. Prabhupada said, no, even if they work in different sections of the deity room, it should not be allowed. More specifically, he stated, man and woman together should not worship unless they are husband and wife. It's a very clear instruction. Then Tamal Krishna wanted to get it very clear. Never be alone, just because they are married to someone else, that is not, they must be married to each other. Prabhupada confirmed that his understanding was correct. They must be together, the man and the woman, meaning the husband and wife can go, not others. As a long-time GBC, Tamal Krishna Maharaj knew the situation in temples because, it's very difficult sometimes. In most temples, that is not the system right now. No, that system should be introduced, Prabhupada said. The husband, wife together can go to worship the deity. If they are not related to the husband, they should not go. Very clear. So Pushta Krishna Swami thought of another possible scenario because, there's many scenarios. What if some brahmacharis are there and where the husband and wife are also worshipping? Still, there is some protection. Prabhupada told his GPC, the husband is there, the woman means her husband must be there. Or you may have a scenario with a man and some other person, a brahmachari, but the woman means husband must be there. So when I read this, I thought of many things. Sometimes we can't do that. And then I was looking at whether Prabhupada spoke about this to others. And there's one person who was Balavanta. He was a disciple of Prabhupada. And generally, a female don't put a garland on a sannyasi. So, but his wife did that. And then some woman said, it should not be done. The garland should be put by a male. And then again, but she gave him one, then and again at Guru Puja time. She also garlanded in Prabhupada, and he smiled. So he was a temple president at that time. He was, the temple president, Balavanta. And then gradually, Prabhupada would speak to disciples, and write to them. But then, because there was so much mail coming, then only the temple president wrote. So once the temple president went into Prabhupada's room, and Prabhupada said, this is a good question, where are your wives? You get it? Where are your wives? The wife is protection for husband. When the husband goes traveling, the wife should also go. Not you, Sukumari. So that's why I said it's based on circumstances. The wife should also go. This is for protection. Got it, Peter Butler? Yeah. So like that, But in another discussion, but it's a long discussion and I may not have so much time, it was about another disciple who was, her name was Krishna Premi. Yeah. And they were asking Prabhupada, they wanted to go back to Sweden, preach, and Prabhupada was instructing them different ways, keep deities, Gaur Nitai, Radha Krishna, you can worship, you can use clothing like Westerners and preach. Then Prabhupada, he asked her, who do you love more, Krishna or your husband? And she's, she didn't know what to say because she didn't. I don't know what to say because I realized I didn't love Krishna and I also didn't love my husband. So it was, we have those situations, Sometimes superficially we have to play like we really love them. Flattery has no limits. Remember that, huh? I was traveling with one devotee, Krishna Chaitanya. He's now in America. And wherever he went, he said, each lady, you're the best cook we ever had. So one time I told one lady, he says this everywhere. So yes, yeah. So like this, because the husband and wife, they, the wife shares the pious results of the husband. But Jadurani, didn't want to share the pious results of her husband. But she read that the Prabhupada wrote it in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam between Devahuti and Kadamba Muni. So Vedic culture is so good. If you chant if your husband is chanting 32 rounds, you're getting 50%. Actually, you chanting 30, the wife is chanting 32 rounds. So it's you get a lot of benefit. So then, after being overseas for about a year, Prabhupada went to New York and then to Boston, where he saw Bharadraj and said, where is your wife? Bharadraj said, this is from not from this conversation, from this excerpt. I pulled it out from somewhere else. You sent her away, Prabhupada. She's in Los Angeles. Because they were artists, Rukmi and Bharadraj. Should I send for her? Prabhupada said, yes. Husband without the wife is only one half. And wife without the husband is only one half. So I had to order, so I had the order to return to Boston. So he had to, so like that. But there's so much. Then it goes on to Darwin's theory. And Prabhupada talks about Darwin's theory. Because these disciples went to a museum and they saw some bones and things, because his idea is that we came from apes. Then Srila Prabhupada, sharp, intelligent, listened to it, dissected the logic behind the skeletal show. So where is Darwin's bones? Darwin got all this knowledge, his bones should be studied first. How he got so much knowledge and from which monkey he came? By studying the bones, discover it. So this is how it is. They're just wasting public money. There's so much things could be said about it. Then Prabhupada got onto a discussion. Well, anyway, there was a discussion that ensued on abortion. And Prabhupada was talking about how the soul enters and how pregnancy begins and how from stage day 1, day 2, day 3, what happens. And the Bhagavatam on the third canto give a very vivid description from the time the semen enters the womb of the lady and how life begins. But abortion, he was saying, and many places he spoke about contraceptive methods is sinful, taking pills, it's like criminal. Just like, the government is making some plan, and if you spoil it, you become a criminal. So, Krishna is making that plan for the soul to enter the womb, and you abort the child, and it's not good. So therefore, we have to be very cautious that we have to be very careful. Even about hearing about these things and engaging in these things are very sinful. We had cases, within the movement where people wanted to their children aborted and things like that. So that's not very good. And Prabhupada was saying that, that even the doctors, they use like a kind of surgical kind of thing to cut the baby into, the fetus into pieces. So it's not very good. Those descriptions given there. But then Prabhupada gives a very interesting class, and then he starts speaking about he gives I just want to go to that point. Yeah, there's a packed audience, everybody was seated, and Prabhupada's, they had the Guru Puja, and he's going to be leaving in a few days or the day after. And then Prabhupada starts speaking about Krishna's energy, how they are working, and how the flower is growing so nicely, and it's so colorful. But even an artist, for him to paint a flower, it'll take him so many days. And he was describing Krishna's energies. Because Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Everything is coming from him. Same as when you paint a flower, you have to employ so much energy. So Krishna also do that same energy. But it is because it is so natural for Krishna. And he quotes that verse from the thing is Svetasvatara Upanishad, Swabhavika Jnana Bala Kriyacha. It's a very interesting verse. Because simply by his willing it is happening. And then he goes on speaking, because we know from the Gita, that everything is working under the direction of Krishna. Madiksena Prakriti Suyatase Chara Charam Hetuna Kuntaya Jagad Vipa Vartate. This material nature is one of my energies, and it's working under my direction. So everything works under Krishna's direction. Then he spoke about association, how we have to associate with each other, get knowledge, and like that. And he spoke specifically about hearing. You cannot utilize him for your service. You must engage yourself to his service. This is what we're meant to do. We have to serve Krishna. And that verse, that's a very famous verse, Satam Prasangam Mama Virya Samvido. You know that verse, right? Bhavanti Hirkana Rasayana Katha. Hearing Krishna Katha. Then your Shraddha, your Bhakti becomes fixed, solid. So by hearing like that, he spoke about association. And then we will. This chapter concludes. Prabhupada is about to leave, and then everybody surrounded him, but he made a very important statement, because they were talking about his illness and so many things. He was initiated a lot of people and he's getting sick. And this is what he said: I simply want the benediction like Arjuna to fight for Krishna to the last breath. And that is what a devotee should be thinking of. Fighting for Krishna till the last breath. And the devotees were very moved by hearing this. And then he said, now that we have a building here, there was a temple built, he said the deities must never be moved again. So, deities must never be moved. So then when Prabhupada got into the flight, now this is the conclusion, when he got into the flight, there was a letter from Pushta Krishna, was very seriously asked in speaking earlier on, we mentioned, while the others were chuckling and laughing and giggling. But Pushta Krishna Maharaj had given Harisuri a letter to hand to Prabhupada when he gets into the plane. It was quite a moving letter, because Pushta Krishna Swami, he's a very great devotee. He came to South Africa, and Partha Maharaj speaks about him when they came. When he came to South Africa, and he was actually studying to be a surgeon, and then he gave this letter. So Prabhupada, he listened very carefully, and this is what he said: as of late, I've been battling with material energy, and I fear that my consciousness has been dangerously polluted in the struggle. My memory of substantive reality has given way to hopelessness and fatigue under the heavy pressing of the whirlwind modes of material nature. I feel as though I slipped from the safety of the transcendental boat and I'm being swallowed up by the waves of futility and despair. Desires have entered my mind from all direction, and it's been a weary struggle against fate. He said he realized that he must have brought this upon himself, but declared, I do not have the strength to wage war any longer. But somehow, by shred of your loving mercy, I am hanging on to your lotus feet and praying for this terrible phenomenon to pass. He finished by making a plea for Prabhupada's blessing to carry on and to give him the strength to endure this brutal onslaught. It was yet another headache, yet another disappointment, yet another senior sannyasi disciple experiencing spiritual difficulty. Prabhupada simply shook his head and murmured, he is not sincere. Then he turned away, chanting softly on his beads. And, these things happen. And there was 2 incidents that I will relate. One was a devotee whose name was Hanuman. He had fallen down from this sannyas position. And then this was in Mexico. So Prabhupada, on his first day in Mexico, the sannyasi now is coming with a white robe. It's like, it's not very good, especially, you change to white after using a saffron. So he came to see his spiritual master. So the guests and everybody left, and there were a few senior devotees. And Hanuman asked Prabhupada, he said, Lord Chaitanya had one disciple called Chota Haridas, and Lord Chaitanya rejected him, and because his association, with women, and he was lusty. So I was one of your sannyas disciples, and I'm too lusty after women. So I was wondering if you have rejected me from your association. So there was a silence, and everybody looked on Prabhupada, who sat with his head down, Prabhupada, after a long pause. And Prabhupada looked at Hanuman and he said quietly, Lord Chaitanya is God. He can spread the movement all over the world in 1 second without the help of anyone if he likes. I am not God. I am simply a servant of God. I require so much assistance and help to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. If somebody renders some small service to help, I'm eternally indebted to you. You have rendered so much assistance to me, how could I reject you? The devotees were moved, and they were moved by this depth of Srila Prabhupada's compassion. So all you sitting in the room, you have rendered so much service to Prabhupada, and I'm thinking that 2 people in the room have met Prabhupada. Prabhuji there has seen Prabhupada in Durban City Hall. He was working there with another person that I met was Peter. Remember Peter? Peter, yes. And and Karuna Shakti, it's her birthday today also, So yes, and seeing Prabhupada and with his deep compassion. And then Hanuman said, no, he spoke about his son, and he said, he kept his son named Bhakti Vedanta. And Prabhupada said, that's not very good, because sometimes you may chastise your son, you cannot chastise your spiritual master. But then he realized, well, it's Bhakti Vedanta Das, and Prabhupada said it's okay, like how we give names of Krishna Das, Bhakti Vedanta Das, like that. So that was one way of, that's how he saw it, but he said the disciple wasn't sincere does not necessarily mean that he didn't have compassion towards him. That's the point, it must be very clear. And the other instance was Madhudvisha, and he was now married, he was a sannyasi, he was living in Vrindavan. And then he shaved up and he came to Prabhupada's room in Vrindavan. And Srila Prabhupada was lying on his bed with a few disciples. And but he was deeply moved to see him. He said, And Prabhupada is telling him, don't leave us. You can stay as a Grihastha, but don't leave us. The way he spoke, like he's speaking to a child that has been lost. And in a mistake, he said mistake may be there, referring to him, falling from the position of sannyas, but it can be rectified. Because Krishna never forgets a person who does a little service. He doesn't forget that. You may forget like what people do, and you yourself even forget what you have done over these years. But Krishna never forgets. And you have always helped me to execute the mission of Lord Chaitanya. And my Guru Maharaj, I will always pray to Krishna to give you strength. I'm insignificant, I cannot do anything, but I pray to Krishna to give you strength. Now this is Prabhupada. So the thing is, people were young, they joined, and they took sannyas, and they tried their best. And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this came from the sannyas ministry, I picked it up in the morning. It is recommended that one accepts sannyas to dedicate his life for the service of the Lord, and everyone must take that kind of sannyas. For by accepting such sannyas, one renders the best service to both his paternal and maternal families. And then there was, in conclusion, this is the last thing I want to speak about one disciple of Prabhupada. He talks about Prabhupada speaking from the Bhagavatam, or some source that he was saying. He was saying like how they get from the different ashram, like the sannyas, the brahmachari, and grihastha goes back to Godhead. Like the grihastha, you got 20, like he mentioned, the brahmachari is said to have 50% chance of going back to Godhead, or achieving perfection. A sannyasi, 75%. And a grihastha, 25%. So one devotee asked Prabhupada, you say that the grihastha only has 25%, but what about Surabhi? Surabhi was an architect. And he was living in very austere conditions in a little office with chatai sheets, and little office. And you must know it was like maybe 4 feet by 6 feet. And he was sitting on an orange crate, like this orange crate, He was sitting on an orange crate. And he had a makeshift table made of just like some found materials, very austere. But he was creating a design for a magnificent temple. And he was working 18 hours a day, if not more. So this devotee asked Prabhupada, what about that person who's doing this, Surabhi? He's a grihastha. He's a householder. Does he have 25% chance to go to liberation or perfection? And Prabhupada stopped in his typical fashion. He put the cane in the sand and he said, he is not a grihastha. He is a sannyasi. So we understood from that these divisions have to do with one's nature. It's about consciousness. It doesn't have to do with anything with the dress, like saffron robe, Just like, yeah. And a grihastha in dress is not necessarily a grihastha. He can be a sannyasi. So Prabhupada strongly illustrated this point. Yes, sometimes for preaching purposes, you have to, we have to take the renounced order and go out and preach and give Krishna consciousness. But many people are in this category already, who are absorbed, like people living here, they're absorbed in Krishna consciousness from the morning till the night. And they are sannyasis. So we'll stop here. If there's any questions or comments, I just took 3 minutes extra, I'm sorry, but I calculate my time. I started 3 minutes late also. I also watched the time. So there's any comments or questions? Anybody want to raise anything? Anybody would like to say anything? Yes, Prabhu? Give him the microphone. We'll just take it one question. Trita Bhatta has to leave.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
The moon that you were talking about, that the scientists went to the moon, the American scientists, is the same moon we're discussing in the Srimad Bhagavatam?
Yeah. You see, I don't, I mean, the moon, yeah, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the same moon. Yeah. The Prabhupada said they didn't go there.
So the scientists actually went to the correct moon, like?
They went to Rahu's planet.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what he says. It's possible.
Okay.
They went to Rahu's planet.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll stop here. Anybody else, or others could leave. If anybody have any questions, I'll be seated for a few minutes. You could ask. Working.
Still working. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he can work and still be, if he's absorbed 20 hours, he could be thinking of Krishna 20 hours at work. His conscious, based on consciousness, Like I worked for the government, I was very busy preaching Krishna consciousness. I was like very busy, every day. And I used all the facilities and I did my work also. It's really possible. Yeah. But there are orders, like renouncement, is there. You may be attached to your work also because people are 64, 65, they can't retire. They're attached to the work. They just cannot give it up, although they're devotees. Yeah, so then they're attached to the work. It's like that, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai. You know what's the most amazing thing is that